Welcome back, everybody, to the Assertive Podcast. I'm Erica.
I'm Jess.
And we are licensed professional counselors reviewing Am I the Asshole Reddit threads to help you learn skills for communication, healthy boundary setting, and assertive interpersonal functioning. Today, we are going to be looking at the skill of validation, which is a communication skill, how to have difficult conversations, and how do you talk to your significant other about going to therapy? We're going to be doing all of this with a post titled, Am I the Asshole for Suggesting That My Wife Go to Therapy Because She Can't Control Her Emotional Outbursts?
I'm going to giggle throughout this one.
I'm going to attempt to stay focused then.
Okay.
For the past several months, my wife and I don't seem to be communicating well. I feel like we're not agreeing on as much as we used to, and it seems like she wants to turn everything into an argument. Today, while out shopping for groceries, I decided to buy a cheaper brand of a type of sauce that she likes. We're trying to save for a house, and we can't afford to buy super expensive stuff. We haven't even gone out to eat or gone to the movies in months. Anyway, I get home with the sauce, and she flips out, saying that she knows the brand that she likes and that this was lower quality and gross. I calmly tried to explain my reasoning, but the logic didn't seem to matter to her. She told me that I had been ignoring her a lot lately and that she didn't feel as though she was being heard. I found this very ironic since I was very clear about how much we needed to save over the next few months. Yet, she wants to go back to our old standard of living. Finally, I had enough of her nonsense, and I started raising my voice, telling her that money doesn't grow on trees and that she's nuts if she thinks we're going to be able to afford a house later this year if we don't save now. I then told her she needed to learn how to control her emotions and stop being so entitled. I even suggested that she attend therapy to begin being a more level-headed and rational person. She absolutely erupted at this, accused me of sexism, and told me that if she were a man, there's no way I would have said what I said. I laughed in disbelief and told her that she clearly has emotional problems as well as delusions, and that therapy could really help her out.
Oh my God.
As she stormed off, I told her that I was only trying to help her, but she never even acknowledged me and simply slammed the bedroom door shut. Oh, Jesus. Take the wheel.
Yeah.
Now I'm worried that she will spend money lavishly just to spite me, and that her destructive behavior will sabotage our financial goals. I want my wife to see things from my perspective, but I think she may have a personality disorder that needs fixing by professionals. I'm totally exhausted by the situation, and I feel like a constant pawn in my wife's twisted games. She's still in the bedroom and refuses to shit. Oh, what is wrong with the world? All right.
Oh boy.
I read ahead, guys. Sorry. She's still in the bedroom and refuses to talk to me even after I slid a list of therapists under the door.
Oh God. Oh my God. This one.
Am I the asshole?
You got through it. Oh man, he's basically like sending her a note that's like, "You're crazy as fuck," and he's like, "She still won't talk to me even after I told her how fucking crazy she is." Can you guys believe that? Oh man, this is like, yeah, it's so much like it's not about the sauce. Like this is
really like men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Seriously, and it just shows like how when you spend so much time together and your lives get so intertwined, you just lose all perspective of what our battle is actually worth picking. Like, oh man, oh boy, this one, I'm excited about this one.
Oh yes, start us off then.
Oh God, I mean, my first impressions of this were, I found as a therapist, sometimes I make mistakes where I will sometimes take the woman's side when I'm hearing a male client tell about conflict. But then I find out like there's probably some emotional deregulation going on. So I don't want to minimize his perspective. It very well could be that she has borderline personality or does have some serious things going on that are making their relationship really dysfunctional. Also, I think that they're both participating in a pattern of contempt a little bit. And I think, first of all, you're not going to save for a house because you picked a different sauce. Like, that is not where those battles come from, and again, maybe he didn't know the impact that the sauce would have or whatever, but that's not really how you're going to get that done. So I think it sounds like she's been increasingly agitated and getting further and further into contempt, hence her reactivity. What I think he is basically telling her is that something is really wrong with you, and you just need to go get fixed. And I don't know how this is getting framed as he's being this super helpful person, but he's basically just telling her like, you're broken and crazy, and maybe if you had a professional fix you, like I think that's really hurtful to have your spouse tell you that like, you're fucked up like that. And I don't doubt that she is probably having some deregulation and maybe needs some support and communication, but I think this is definitely a tandem conflict. I don't think it's just a him or her thing going on.
No, I agree. I mean, working in the mental health profession, I don't know if you get this, but sometimes I get clients who come in and say, I need fixing. Like, I'm so fucked up. And I was like, I doubt you're fucked up. I bet what you're doing now at one point really helps you.
Yeah.
Outgrown that style of behavior, so now it's harming you, but I don't necessarily know if you need fixing. You just need help identifying these patterns, and we need to get you new behaviors. But I think if your partner is saying that to you, or really anybody in your support system is saying like, hey, you're fucked up, like you need like not only fixing, but you need professional level fixing, that's going to hurt no matter who's telling you that. Like, we would never look at a client and be like, gosh, you're really fucked up. What happened to you?
You're broken as fuck. Yeah, he says, I suggested that she attend therapy to begin being a more level-headed and rational person, which means that she is not those things, and those must be things that he values. So he basically says you are completely emotional and irrational, which is basically saying your perspective in this situation is not real. So I think that's really easy to minimize somebody else's stance and to not have a lot of understanding of them if you're saying nothing about you is reasonable. I think that's going to make her feel really unheard. And so I can see how maybe she feels being ignored and that she doesn't feel heard because it sounds like he doesn't really respect her perspective, And so she's kind of escalating into all that. They both could probably do a little better in terms of validating the other person, because I think one of the most important things in conflict is that you each take turns talking. And after you share a piece of your story, the other person can kind of summarize or kind of synthesize what you shared and reflect it back to you. So each person is taking turns sharing, reflecting. Like, that's not really going on here. So kind of introduce some validation skills to us and talk us through how you teach clients to do that.
Yeah, validation, or it's also referred to as emotion coaching, is a way to communicate that you understand what the other person is feeling and why they're feeling that. And in communication and conflict, a lot of times people just want to be heard and they want to feel understood. And this is a great skill to communicate that. And there are some other steps after validation to do the full emotion coaching process. But a lot of times I found you can stop at validation because that's really all they wanted. They know how to solve their own problems. They don't really need you for that. They just wanted to be seen and heard. So the husband is prioritizing rationality in the rational side of the brain. And so obviously when you have one partner who functions out of logic, one partner who functions out of emotion, we're obviously going to have conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So let me get into the skill. We have another lovely formula for you guys because we know how much you love formulas. All right. So first, we're going to lose the word but.
Oh.
And essentially, we say anytime you use the word but, you're erasing everything that came before that. So if I'm saying, I understand your perspective, but you just erase the fact that you said, I understand your perspective, they no longer believe you.
Mm-hmm.
So get into the practice of getting rid of but and replacing that with something else, maybe such as and. Like, I understand your perspective and I disagree with you because XYZ.
That's my go-to. I love just subbing out and is my jam. Just instead of when you go to say but, just say and, because it allows like the dichotomy and greatness of life to occur at the same time. And I think that's,
Yes.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Tell us more. I'm so captivated.
Yes. So essentially, we want to listen for the emotion that they are sharing. And the nice thing is, a lot of times people are just going to give us that emotion if we are actually listening to understand.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to your significant other, to your friends, or to your support system, cue into the emotion words that they're picking out and expressing to you, because you're going to essentially regurgitate that back to them.
Mm-hmm.
So they're doing a lot of this work for you. And if they aren't, maybe they do function more out of the rational side of their brain, or they have difficulty identifying their emotions. Use a little empathy, put yourself in their shoes and figure out, if I were them, what would I be feeling? And if you guess wrong, people want to correct you. So they're probably going to go in and correct you at that point.
So like looking about, it's not how you say what you say, it's how you say it. So tuning in, it's like, wow, this person's really agitated or amped up. It's like, wow, you look angry, or you seem stressed, or I get the sense that you're confused, and kind of just starting to kind of throw out some little emotion words to see if that's resonating with the other person.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. So the kind of official formula is, I understand why you would feel, throw in the emotion word that you either empathized or that they provided for you, because then you're going to tell them why they're feeling the way they felt. And again, you have your listening ears turned on. They've given these to you. Otherwise, again, use your context clues from listening to the conversation and use your empathy skills. What I really like about validation is it forces you to listen to understand instead of listen to rebut.
Yeah, listen to instead, or like, yeah, don't respond. You're really trying to just reflect back to them what they're given to you.
Mm-hmm. So in this particular post, the wife is saying she doesn't feel like her husband hears her. She's feeling ignored. The husband thinks this is ironic because he's been really clear in his communication style, which just on the surface kind of leads me to believe he's acknowledging kind of the facts, but not the feelings. Mm-hmm. He's talking about, well, I've been clear on my goals. She didn't say shit about the goals. She says she doesn't feel seen and heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we do this, our brain loves patterns, and it specifically likes patterns of 3. So if you can come up with 3 becauses, it's going to amplify your validation. You can even create a variation and find some synonyms for the emotion to go with that, or maybe they've communicated multiple emotions. That's also going to work really well. But if not, use the same emotion, aim for 3. If you can't do 3, at least do 1, right? 1 is better than none. If you're like, I can't come up with 3, so I can't validate them, that's a lie. It's cop out. Come up with 1.
At least one because.
I you that you can BS at least 1 validation skill or like statement from there. For this one, we might say, if we're talking about like the very surface level issue of the sauce, and we want to like nip this in the butt at the beginning of the conflict, we might say, I understand why you're upset because this sauce doesn't taste as good as the other one. And it makes sense. You're angry at me because I didn't communicate with you prior to making this unilateral decision and changing your normal sauce.
Mhm.
And I imagine it was maybe a shock when you unloaded the groceries and you were looking forward to seeing the sauce that you really like and enjoy, and instead found this lower quality, blah tasting sauce.
Mm-hmm.
Mic drop. We're not justifying. We're not saying why we bought the sauce we did. None of that. We're just validating. Let them respond.
Yeah. And I'm going to I'm imagining myself in the grocery store on a budget. And if my partner, if I was like, ooh, I know that they really like the sauce. It's like, you know what? Not getting that today because this is 80 cents more. So it's like kind of like picking her preferences as the battles to pick probably kind of hurt her feelings. Yeah. I thought, so you're saying she's distressed. So it's, you seem hurt because I chose to save money on something that was really important to you. I didn't talk to you about it beforehand. And you were really disappointed when I got home and it was not what you had planned to see. She's like, yeah, you mother, blah, 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 you know, like just kind of letting them.
Dysregulated. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then you do more of that, right? Because the point of anger is to give you a voice. So for letting somebody know, hey, I'm understanding what you're saying. I'm ready to listen. I get where you're coming from. That anger is going to subside because we're giving them a space to be heard. But
yeah.
When we validate.
I don't know if you remember this with the validation and emotion coaching, but I like to use kind of the analogy of an elevator. And when somebody's like emotionally flooded, right, they're trying to escape the waters. They've gone all the way up the elevator. They're in the penthouse. They're on the rooftop bar. They're all the way at the top. And logic is living down in the lobby. So they cannot access logic. They can't have a conversation with you. They cannot understand why you bought the sauce that you did. They can't do that because they're in the penthouse and you're down in the lobby. So validation is a really good skill to use to de-escalate somebody who's emotionally flooded.
Definitely.
Like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. You get it. And they come down a few floors and you continue talking to them. And they come down a few floors more. And eventually they're at the lobby. I see my error. I won't do this again. So you know I did it because I thought the 80 cents was worth it, but we just spent an hour de-escalating you. And I would much rather spend 80 cents.
Yeah. This is like, pick your battles. How much is your time and emotional energy worth? So if I can so maybe if the wife wanted to practice validation, she could say something like, I can see how it would be confusing when you're making decisions that align with our goals and you're trying to make little adjustments to have long-term benefit. And then when you come home after doing this errand that I appreciate you taking care of, I freak out. I imagine that's quite jarring for you. And it's probably frustrating because I think you probably had good intentions.
Yeah. And that even goes back to assuming your partner has good intentions and are not out to hurt you, which I think we talked about in maybe Fair Fighting or one of the earlier episodes.
Really early. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can, and two, I can kind of, if you feel like your partner's dismissing your needs or minimizing your perspective, and then if you have this sauce that you like and you just like the sauce and they kind of pick that as an opportunity to save 80 cents, I can see how that would be quite hurtful, and again, she could have some serious mental health stuff going on. I'm not even saying, I don't know I don't know, but I can see how she might get there. Yeah. It's not about the sauce. So with the validation, would this have been something that you would have said, hey, as soon as you walk in to the house, you're unloading groceries, she flips out? Are you saying that is this like a kind of a go-to, when somebody first starts kind of demonstrating anger, is it like a go-to kind of skill that you would encourage someone to use? Validation?
Absolutely. Yeah. Validation always, even if they're sad, they're angry, they're frustrated, if they're hurt. Like I have a friend going through grief right now, right? Getting some emotional text messages, and it's like validation works for every emotion. And all it does is it keeps them closer to their baseline. They may still escalate, but they're going to stay closer to their baseline. if they're not feeling like they're crazy because you're telling them like, hey, this makes perfect sense. Of course you feel like this.
Yeah. And so I hear, again, this is a little gender conforming. I hear it mostly with male clients, but with anybody, or even if like maybe you're a type A or even kind of controlling, if you find that people in your life are like, I don't need you to fix it, what they're telling you is, I just need you to fucking validate me. Like, these are the skills you need to be working on. If every time you find yourself in an emotional conversation, you don't know how to tolerate that, you're trying to give solutions, you're trying to rescue people from things, they're just needing validation. Just identify the emotion and make a guess of why they might feel that way. That's all they need from you, right? Because they're a fully developed adult person, and they have the dignity to manage themselves, and they don't need you to change how they feel. They just need you to be there with them as they're feeling it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to go into like full steps of emotion coaching because you kind of touched on it. So step 1, we are validating. Step 2, we're meeting that emotional need. So we're still not problem solving, right? So if somebody's upset, maybe they need you to help them do some type of calming activity, like you want to take some deep breaths together, right? If somebody's sad or hurt, they probably need some action of comforts, like a hug.
Yeah.
And then the absolute last step is problem solving. It's like we're meeting the practical need, which is problem solving. So a lot of times we're validating and that solves it. Sometimes we're validating and meeting the emotional need, and that solves it. And in very few cases are we validating, meeting the emotional need, and then meeting the practical need. Most people know how to solve their problems. They're just too emotionally flooded to access the logic part of their brain. I imagine we talked about this at one point in the season, but if we haven't, now's the perfect opportunity.
I was on 1 or 2. We talked about, emotional flooding was like really early because that's so problematic.
Yeah. Like when we are emotionally flooded, our emotions hijack our brain and we actually don't have access to our logic. And so a lot of times if you're freaking out and panicking and you're going to your friend group or the group chat and like, I don't know what to do. And they're like, why don't you just do X, Y, and Z? Like, it's plain as day. You're like, fuck, why didn't I think of that? Well, you didn't think of that because your emotions hijacked your brain and you can't access your logic center, whereas they're 5 steps removed. They have no emotions involved. They have full access to their logic and they can see it pretty clear. And so a lot of times if we can help people kind of take out the water from the emotional flooding, they get access back to their logic center and they don't actually need you to do the practical need. They have access to that part of their brain and they can do it themselves.
Yeah. So it's like they don't need to continue to demonstrate emotion when they, because emotion, part of them are internal signals, but they're also a form of communication, right? So when we remove the kind of nonverbal necessity of it, because they know that they're being understood, the need to continue to demonstrate emotions generally declines. So you said the steps are validating, meeting the emotional need, and then problem solving. Yeah. I have actually on my caseload, I have quite a few of this right now. Clients who struggle with emotional expression, which also makes it difficult for them to know what to do when their partner is usually what it comes up, when their partner is experiencing distress. So I always go back to like the love languages too. Hey, if your partner's a physical touch person and they're crying, they probably want a hug, or if your partner's really mad, maybe and there is acts of service, maybe they want you to help them with something, and so checking into it, because I think sometimes it can be hard to know how to meet the emotion and like provide that. So I think if you're unsure, doing the 5 love languages, but also kind of asking your partner. Sometimes I also have scripts with clients. Hey, when your girlfriend's sitting on the couch crying and like you don't look at her, it makes her feel like you're not open to comfort her, right? So I'm kind of have these scripts, like when she's crying, she needs this. When she's stressed, she needs that. When she's mad, she needs this. You have to ask your partner too of, hey, I don't know what to do here. Like, what are you needing when you feel this way? And they'll tell us that 1 or 2 times. And then we have to put that into our little file cabinet to start giving a little bit more intuitive of what our people need when they're distressed. And it's okay if you don't know, first of all, you need to ask, but then like you need to keep track of that because that's an important part of being emotionally available in a relationship.
Yeah. I had a client who, when she became dysregulated, just needed to be told Like everything's going to be okay. We'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I was like, no way this works. She's just telling me this because she's calm. Swear to God, it worked. I was like, holy fuck. She like took a couple deep breaths and we were like right back on track in session. I was like, we can figure this out. This is a solvable problem. We got this. And she was like, yeah, we do got this, huh?
Words of affirmation, right? Of, hey, a little reality check. I don't feel unsafe. I can handle your feeling of unsafe. There's no actual threat. Like everything's groovy right now. Like, oh yeah. Okay, I couldn't see that for myself. But when I go down to the lobby and everyone's, chill, I'm like, oh yeah, things are chill. The building's not on fire,
Yeah. And I think if you aren't sure what you need with each emotion, taking a little bit of time to explore that, so that if your partner is proactive and asks you about that or fails to meet the need, you can say, well, what did I actually want from them? This is kind of circling back to unspoken expectations.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily know how to meet our emotional needs. Everybody needs some different things. Some people need a little time to process internally. And then once they process internally and get a grip on that, they'll process externally, and they just need somebody to listen or throw out a few different perspectives, and they'll go back and think about those. But take a little bit of time, figure out, all right, here are my emotions. We really got to do these core emotions.
We really got to fit. I know these episodes, man, it just demystifies it. Yeah. And if you're not sure how to reflect an emotion, I know it sounds like some cheesy therapeutic bullshit, man, but like get a feeling wheel. Like that stuff does work, right? Like that's how we learn that have the vocab, because if you don't have the emotional vocabulary, you're not going to be able to validate. Like you have to have that skill. And if you don't know what you need when you feel a certain way, you cannot just expect your partner to know that, right? Because that, hopefully our family of origins, we learned that. But if we didn't, we need to figure that out for ourselves, because our partner's not a mind reader. So you'd have a thing of when I'm
crossing things out as they're doing things that are unhelpful. Once you become regulated, you'd be like, I saw, like, I felt that you were trying. That shit actually escalated me and really pissed me off. When you said to calm down or that it's going to be okay, did not feel like it was going to be okay in that moment. And I need to just say, it feels like it's not going to be okay. That's okay.
Just let them have their dignity to have their feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to be open to the learning curve as you guys acclimate to each other and get to know each other's responses. I think she could benefit from therapy. I think they both could, but I don't think his suggestion is totally off base here. Right. I think the timing in which he chose to give this perhaps helpful tip, that was not ideal. Again, that she probably could benefit from therapy. It's not like they're even having some like marital issues and kind of pent up things that aren't really getting resolved. So if we have some constructive feedback for a partner, or we're anticipating, a hard conversation's imminent, how do you talk to clients about kind of approaching in terms of making sure it's the right time and place for stuff?
Yeah. So I always start with this first skill of setting the stage. And so we essentially want to make sure that we have dedicated time for this particular conversation. So we don't want to sandwich it in the commercial of our favorite TV program. That's probably a time they've dedicated to kind of relax, recharge, zone out, right? They probably aren't in the mood to have a tough conversation. They just walk in the door and they've barely set their stuff down. Probably not the best time to have that. They haven't really readjusted to being at home from work, right? Sometimes we have to schedule it so it feels kind of clinical to say like, hey, I have something pretty important I want to tell you. I would like your full attention. Do you think you'll have some time tomorrow for us to have this chat? Or maybe we can have it over dinner. Can we not have dinner in front of the TV? Can we sit at the table and have this serious conversation?
Speaking of like a neutral place, a neutral time, nobody's elevated. Speaking of fair fighting, that goes back to no ambushing.
Yep.
We don't want to jump on somebody. I hear it a lot where if somebody goes through somebody's phone when somebody's sleeping, you cannot wake that person up. I hear that a lot. Where I'm like, ooh, So that's part of ambushing too, is do not wake your partner up, and yeah, being emotionally flooded to give what is probably constructive and probably good feedback. Therapy would be helpful. Doing that in the heat of an argument is going to feel super judgy, and like you're telling somebody that they're being unreasonable and that they're being crazy. There's no scenario in which that would have gone well. I don't think.
No. You're always going to feel attacked, for sure.
Feeling attacked, and just really minimized. And I think one sentence I really loved here. He goes, "As she stormed off, I told her that I was only trying to help her, and she never even acknowledged me and simply slammed the door in my face, or simply slammed the door shut." It's like she never even acknowledged how helpful I was being. It's like that was not helpful at all, and maybe if he's saying, I could see that he's making efforts to be attentive to their budget. He's recognizing that it takes little changes to have big impacts. I can see he's being helpful in that way. He went to the grocery store, all that. But taking her inventory about how she's not level-headed, she's irrational, she needs to control her emotions, she's being so entitled. He's just listing all of these character defects and really kind of reaming her, I think. She's not saying, hey, you're this selfish prick or whatever. She's not but he's making like character assassination kind of statements here. Not for a fighter, that's like degrading language is like rule number one. And so I think he got more escalated in this conflict as well. They
kind of downplay that or justify it as well. I don't know the exact line, but he somewhere in here says, like, I lost my shit. He said it differently than that, but finally, I had enough of her nonsense. I started raising my voice, is how he put it. And so even he didn't use the word yelling. He's almost even minimizing his emotional response to her and saying, I started raising my voice. I didn't raise my voice. I just started, which makes me think like maybe we're slightly speaking louder. He was probably full blown yelling at her.
Well, probably. And
psycho and go to fucking therapy.
Yeah, and he says, I told her, I think that she's nuts if we think we're going to be paid off the house. I mean, he's name calling. He's like being super unfair and fighting. And again, she probably it sounds like she's probably uncomfortable. She probably would feel better if she went to therapy and at least got to own her side of the street for that. But I think he's being incredibly inflammatory.
Yeah.
Man.
If I were her, I think part of my frustration in this would be the fact that he deprived me of a sauce I really like.
Yeah.
And he wants me to shell out all this money for therapy. Cheapest copay I've seen is like $2. $10 on that fucking sauce.
That 80 cents is turning out to be super expensive. Oh, shit. That's a really good point.
Like, I'll go to therapy when we have enough money to buy the sauce I want.
You motherfucker. And again, like, you're not going to save her a house because you bought a different sauce. And I think of all the battles that he could have picked, he picked something that she seemed to really care about. And I'm going to bet $1 million if he called and he said, hey, I got the vodka sauce in my hand. I got this bread in the other brand. Do you care if I buy the cheaper one? She would have said, no, do not buy the cheaper one. It's not even like, I think that he knew not to ask her because she would say, I don't want that. And I think he felt like he knew what was best. Her needs weren't as important as their goals. And he picked a battle that was not a very good one to pick. Like, you got to have a little bit of enjoyment from life. Like, damn, it's a sauce, man.
And I would be curious if there were things that only he ate on the list that he also went cheaper. That I think would be playing
that would
more
be indicative. Yeah.
But if he's still getting his name brand shit and I'm over here with off-brand Joe who tastes like poo, like this.
Oh yeah, especially like, yeah, it's just like she wants to go back to living our lavish lifestyle. It's like, damn, bro, it's sauce.
This is my thing. Like, we say it's not just about the sauce. And I really see them just depriving themselves of joy. They're depriving themselves of things that probably make them feel connected. The wife is saying, I'm feeling pretty ignored and not seen or heard. He's talking about, like, we haven't been eating out. We haven't gone to the movies. To me, I'm hearing, like, we're not even doing date nights.
Yeah.
All we're doing is sitting at home, not having any joy. The small pieces of joy, like our sauce, that we do get out of life now. I can't even have those. I bet she is feeling pretty ignored. Her love language isn't being met if it's quality time, if it's doing things together like that. And so I think
or
he needs
gifts or words of affirmation. If any of the love languages are her love languages, she probably feels really unloved.
Yes.
Very loving.
So I think he really needs to look beyond the sauce, look beyond the budget, and say, we've talked about financial boundaries, and I don't know if this has come up, but when I talk to my clients about creating a budget, I specifically tell them, you keep a line item in there for things that bring you joy. Maybe we're decreasing the frequency to be respectful of our budget. So if it's something we do weekly, we're doing it every other week, or we're doing it monthly. But we are keeping that in because you don't want to drive yourself crazy. That's part of your self-care. For them, that's part of tending to the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you take all of that out, you're no longer tending to the relationship. So yeah, I bet you are seeing increased conflict.
Yeah, that's
You're not connecting. You're not doing anything to speak each other's love language now.
totally. And if this had happened, if he had brought home the wrong sauce when things were going really well, she'd probably be like, damn, I see you trying to save money. I really like that name brand sauce. The next time, if you could get that sauce, but we'll still, I think that would have gone really differently, as opposed to when your love tank, especially when both people's love tank are empty. Something like the sauce creates situations like this because there's no sense of connection,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
And too, I think budgets can almost be kind of like a cuss word, because budgets are almost some kind of like financial abstinence or something like that, where I'm like, the point of a budget is to take inventory of your financial wellness. It is not to deprive yourself, right? So if your saving goals are so rigid that you can't enjoy something like a sauce that you would like, you probably need to like the timeline of your goals. What is the need to push this pace so fast? What are other areas, but if it's that tight, I think that is showing that you are way over ambitious on your saving goals, because that's not how budgets should feel. That should be a long-term plan for wellness, not this, financial anorexia that's, I think, going on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I think about my caseload, I have more men than I have women. And I'm betting at least 50% of those. Yeah, I work with a lot more guys. I'm betting 50% of those men got here because they come off angry in conflict, that their spouse said, you need to go to therapy. That happens a lot. So I think there is a space where giving your spouse that suggestion can be constructive. If a couple is engaged in something like this, how can you talk to your partner and suggest therapy? We talked about, setting the stage a little bit, validating. What would that look like?
So I have a couple of ways that I talk to my clients about this. I see mostly women. I do have some men on my caseload, but percentage-wise, it's higher in women. So I'm kind of the reverse, but I get the same thing. They want their partner to go.
No one wants their partner to go, and I'm seeing the guys.
Like, all right, send them to Jess.
Yeah, they're over here trying to. Yeah, I'm like, God, it's so cruel that men and women are paired up because they do not understand each other. Like, it really sucks. For these guys, I'm like, God, you don't stand a chance against us. We're eating you alive up in here.
I don't know if it's any more helpful though in same-sex couples.
Probably not.
There's just as much a need for those relationship therapists as well.
Yeah, for sure.
It's attachment styles and relationships in general, but couple skills I go on. The first one I think we talked about when we did the episode, I want to say on emotional boundaries with the emotional vampire friend.
Yeah.
Where we just kind of use some noticing language. Hey, I'm noticing anytime there's a small problem, it escalates pretty quickly. And I'm curious how that feels for you, and maybe you want some skills. Another one is personal experience is always a good one. Like, hey, I've been in therapy and it's really helped me learn to kind of communicate what I'm feeling instead of exploding. I'm curious if that may be a good option for you, if you would be interested in maybe learning some of the skills I've learned. Would you like me to share those with you? And maybe we're not quite getting them to therapy, but we're getting them a little buy-in. With couples particularly, and this may seem slightly manipulative, what I tend to suggest is they may be more agreeable to couples therapy where it's not there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Right? It's the, hey, I'm noticing when we argue, things escalate. We tend to say things we later regret. I never feel good after those conversations. We also rarely get to a place of agreement or compromise. And I'm invested in this relationship. We're independent, stubborn human beings, but we love each other.
Mm.
And I think we maybe need some additional skills so we can communicate better and fight better, so we don't have to go back and apologize for things we said in the heat of the moment. Would you be willing to go to couples therapy with me? Then you're getting some buy-in, because I don't know one single couples therapist who won't look at the couple and say, who's in individual therapy?
I was about to say, because you're hoping. I'm like, God, hope that couples therapist knows what's up and says, all right, both of you getting your own people too. Yeah.
So you're really only doing like half the work. And then you get a teammate in your couples therapist who says, like, I see some like things from your past or from your childhood that it might actually be really helpful if you met with somebody individually. And I think it could really be impactful for your relationship. Or like, this really isn't in the service or in the domain of couples therapy, so I can't necessarily help you process through this, but I know these really great individual therapists, and I think they would really be able to help you one-on-one process through some of these.
And I think you kind of hit it there, that I think that's why it feels so painful when your partner is telling you to go to therapy, because it's saying you are the problem. I'm not at fault here. And although there are circumstances in which that could be true, most of the time it takes two to tango. So for one partner to say, this, I'm not doing anything wrong and you're nuts and you need to get fixed, I think it can really kind of break that person a little bit. I think it creates some power differentials in the dynamic where one person is seen as regulated and one person is seen as dysfunctional. And so I think even opening up those kind of conversations in terms of, hey, as a couple, there are things that I'm not loving how this is going. I think that also lets the person know that you are taking accountability for your side of the street. I don't necessarily get the sense that the OP here has accountability. I think he does think it's his wife's fault, right? So, I mean, that would take a sense of humility.
Yep.
And self-awareness. But if you find yourself thinking, oh my God, my partner really needs to go to therapy, that should also be a pause to say, am I contributing to this? Is this person just in a vacuum acting crazy? Usually not. I'm probably participating too. And so taking a little bit of your side of the street, and I think that that's why it's so hurtful when it's just one person suggesting it, because it creates this you're more fucked up than I am kind of thing. Yep. So I love your idea of Bailey, hey, let's do this together, because that is reality. And then hopefully the individual therapist can have a little bit better idea of, you don't need to be taking each other's inventory, because you'll each will have your own individual therapist, let you know what you need to, opportunities for growth are, you know.
Yeah.
The difficulty when contempt is in relationships, because it's so hard sometimes that's going on for a while to view your partner's perspective as legitimate, because it's in opposition of what you're wanting. And so it's a really big challenge to say, given their experiences, what they're doing is making sense. You know, it's being like, if I can just get the right words, or if they can just have some ownership, they would know that they're wrong. Where things don't really work that way. It's usually a gray. And, you know, there's both parties need to make some adjustments here.
Yeah. And even in the post, he's saying, you know, they aren't agreeing on as much. She wants to turn everything into a fight. And then closer to the end, he says something to the effect of, I want my wife to see things from my perspective. And I think people need to realize there's a difference between seeing things from someone else's perspective and agreeing with you. I see things from your perspective and still disagree with you. I have the capability and complexity in my brain to do that and to hold two opposing views in my mind at once. So just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I don't see your perspective.
And that's like so true, that like I think people say, oh, if they would understand me, that they would agree with me. And I think that there's a space where somebody can understand you and not agree with you. And that for conflicts to be resolved does not mean that everybody agrees with everybody. Yeah. This shit happens all the time.
It does, yeah.
And it's like cohabitating relationships where it's like, again, it's not about the sauce, right? But like all these big loaded conflicts become associated with these kind of minuscule things that happen in day-to-day life. And it can be really difficult for the partners to figure out, why are we fighting about sauce? Why is this happening? But when you really take a step back and unpack it, there's all these emotional needs, there's these frustrations, these feelings of loneliness that are going on. And I think this is such a common experience that people have in marriage and cohabitation.
Yeah.
What do you think went well here? Are there any salvageable points? I think she used a timeout. She recognized this is not productive. She's obviously getting avoidant. So she went to the bedroom, refuses to talk to him, set a limit. Because he was being unfair.
You are so gracious to give her.
That's self-efficacy. I'm like, there's got to be something that we did here right. I know it. Not everybody.
I think that was stonewalling. I think she said, like, fuck you, and went to the bedroom, slammed the door, and refused to talk to him anymore. I think if she had said, you know what, I'm pretty escalated, I can't have a calm conversation or say nice things to you, I'm gonna go chill for a second in the room, that sounds like a timeout. But storming off to the bedroom and slamming the door sounds like she stonewalled.
I don't know. If somebody told me I was delusional, I had emotional problems, was name calling, I'd be like, we're done. This is getting shitty. You're being super mean to me. So I guess
you kind of narrated what was happening. You didn't narrate. You just kind of stormed off. And so I think the lack of narration or explanation is indicative of stonewalling.
Yeah. He's like laughing in her face. Oh boy. Yeah. Okay, so probably not the best use of a timeout. It did end the conflict and it stopped escalation.
I think it stopped her point. Like, she stopped engaging. Even after that, he continued to like push her buttons and slid that list of therapist names under the door, which is super passive aggressive. That means the conversation ended. You then went online and Googled therapists near me, got a list, printed that out, and slid it under her door. He was still agitating the issue.
Totally.
Really trying to disengage from this.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. He did not respect her taking space. Yeah. It's like, let me call Blue Cross Blue Shield and I'm going to find a list of providers in our area. It's like, damn, how long did that take you? Just slide a list. That probably took 30 minutes. Jesus.
Yeah. So of course she's not responding.
Right. I think it sounds like they both have the same financial goals. So for several months, they've both been on page without not going out to eat, not going out to the movies. Again, that's financial anorexia. I don't think that's appropriate application of a budget, but they do seem to have a shared objective.
A shared objective, I will agree with.
Execution,
I think they disagree. She's saying, I want to go back to our standard of living, which, again, when she says it like that, he is probably interpreting that as, if we go to the movies every Friday night for our date night, he's thinking 4 nights a month. And she's like, I could compromise and do 1 or 2.
I don't think that she actually said that. I think that he's saying, her saying that she wants this sauce is her demanding a return to standard of living, which I think, or maybe she did say that.
But yeah, I think they are on very different pages as to how to save this money and when they're meeting this goal. And I think trying to save for a house in 1 year is a pretty big goal. Can it be done? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think if you're still living independently, most people's biggest expense is their house or their living environment. So unless you're like trying to move in with the in-laws or something to that effect, or get some roommates, I think you need to give yourself a bit more room, unless this is like your final push.
Yeah.
Got the majority of the budget saved. We want to get this last like 5-10K. Can we push it this year? And how do we do that? Right. And so I think they just need to get on the same page as to how much is feasible and how do we go about doing that. But I agree, they both want to buy a house. I would give you that one.
Oh, there's gotta be some common ground here, guys. Come on, let's go. What do we agree on? Let's focus on that. So, who do you think is the asshole here?
Man, who isn't? Husband is the asshole. I think he failed to validate. He's not engaging in fair fighting. He's escalating an already escalated situation. with sliding therapist names under the door when you've already said she's emotionally dysregulated. Why would you do that? That's non-logical, which tells me he's also emotionally escalated and is ignorant to his own emotional state.
Yeah.
Nobody in their right fucking frame of mind would be like, this is gonna solve the problem.
I'm so helpful. God, I did all the legwork. I just found this list of therapists for her. It's like,
yeah.
ugh.
So he's emotionally escalated and just ignoring that. So he's an asshole. She's an asshole. She's not saying what she actually needs. Like, hey, I'm feeling disconnected from you. Maybe she is also engaging in some petty behavior of her own. He said he had some concern about her rebelling and spending lavishly.
Mm-hmm.
And so either that's an irrational fear or that's a fact-based fear.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So potentially she has some of her own behaviors and mindsets that she needs to work on.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, I think bottom line is you're both assholes and you don't know how to communicate with your significant other.
Yeah, I agree. And even if somebody has a personality disorder, some serious mental health stuff, name calling and screaming, like that's not even if you fully believe that she had something that needed professional fixing, why would you treat somebody like that? Right. Yeah, he's not coming off concerned. He doesn't look worried. He's not expressing his frustrations. He's just beating her down. And he's basically like, if I make her small enough, she'll go talk to a therapist. I think is probably how that feels. And yeah, I do agree. She's coming out passive aggressive. Again, it's not about the sauce, right? She needs to be more direct in what she's needing or some of the frustration she's had, or offer solutions to come up and feel more connected, or give examples of times she doesn't feel heard and what she's needing instead. Oh boy, summarize this bad boy for us.
All right. First and foremost, most of the time, the people you are in conflict with, or even not in conflict with, and you're part of their support system, they simply want to be heard. The best way to hear them is to validate. So we say, I understand why you're feeling. We name the emotion. Typically, they're going to give this to us and do that work. Occasionally, we'll have to put in a little bit of sweat, figure that out through our listening skills. And then we say why they're feeling that. I understand why you're feeling frustrated because. If we can do that 3 separate times, we are elevating the level of validation. Not being able to do it 3 times is not an excuse to do it. I have full faith in you guys. You can do it 1 time. Do it the 1 time. It will change your life.
Mm-hmm.
When we can validate, it takes somebody from the elevated emotional flooded state where they're up in the penthouse, and it helps them come back down to the lobby. Only in the lobby can they have a rational conversation with you. They may also need a break. If they want from being flooded to the lobby, don't jump into your logical argument. Give them a second to acclimate. Then see, is the stage set to have this logical, rational conversation with them?
Mm-hmm.
If you are in a relationship and you want to suggest to your significant other that they go to therapy, you can make a notice of their behaviors and say maybe therapy would be useful for you. Just want to throw that out there. You can say, hey, these skills have really helped me from when I was in therapy, and try and share some of your education, get some buy-in that way. Or say hey, I'm not saying this is all on you. All of this increased conflict takes 2 to tango. I'm doing my part. Let's go to therapy together and figure this shit out, because I'm interested in saving this relationship and not fighting every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What else?
Yeah, budgets are not the same as financial anorexia. So if you have good financial goals, depriving yourself between now and then is not the way to go about doing that. You need to be able to enjoy life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not about the sauce,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so important. If you feel like you're having an argument about something silly and insignificant, chances are that was the ignition point and it's been building for some time. That's a great indication of going to your partner and saying hey, I get the feeling that this is not about the sauce. Do you want to tell me what's actually going on or what's been building for you?
Yeah. Amen.
All righty. That's what we have for you guys today. I know we threw a lot at you, but I hope it's really useful. As always, we would love to hear your thoughts. Send them to us at assertivepodcast@gmail.com. Until next time.